Hey, YouTubies, I want to tell you a little story. This is a story about something I dreamed about. This was in a dream. Now, I haven't told you all of my experiences that led up to the point of what I do today, and that may be done possibly at a later time. But needless to say, before I got into all these books, I did have some kind of a strange series of experiences for a while in my early 30s. And I did experiment around with shamanic journeying and meditation and so on. But this picture or image is from a dream I had, and it is a strange one. And I tend to lean towards reincarnation. I believe you do have a soul. I'm actively trying to investigate ghosts, those kind of situations, just to see if there's anything real to it, which would indicate some sort of a soul survives. But in this dream, what you see here is a tall woman and a tall man on the edge of land and the ocean. And this woman was wearing a striped head covering, or whatever you want to call it. It was an indication of her occupation. And I was this woman in the dream. And the man had red hair, long red hair, or auburn hair, if you want to call it that. Now, this was a strange dream, and before I saw this image, I saw some kind of an explosion, and the entire sky turned red. It was thick, and it was red, like a fire, something, for quite a while. And then I saw myself going to this center building, and the fountains that were out and once beautiful with water had all dried up and began to crack and deteriorate in front of this building. And in this building, we were taking care of families and people. The people were aging, and we had never experienced in this time period old age and the problems associated with it and what to do. And I was one of the people trying to deal with that and help people transition into what the situation was now. And in this image, this is a man that had asked me to come with him to the colony and to leave and start anew. And I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay with the people who stayed on what was left of this island and help them. I was kind of like a priestess counselor. And he left. And I believe I stayed. And what you see up in the air is a spacecraft. That I did see. The black plant is a dead plant because things had died. And that was the end of the dream. Him asking me to come to the colony, and I wouldn't go. I wanted to stay and help the people that stayed on the island and help them deal with how things were at that time. Now, I've had a lot of other strange dreams. I've done regression therapy. I'm not going to get into it. It's just fodder to be made fun of. But I tend to think there's something to that and to a certain quality of dreams people may have that don't seem like a dream. They seem like a very real experience or a remembering. And I see in other things a man, and here he is with this auburn hair in a black robe, but in reality he has no hair, or eventually has no hair. And then I see him in his ship underground with some sort of electromagnetic method of traveling in these tunnels. And that's it. So I do think that the most frightening thing to these archons was the fact that whatever they had created, a deteriorated clone of themselves with a lesser lifespan or whatever it was that they did, had a soul. And it frightened them that this thing or whatever had a soul. And I look at all of these elites, and they don't want to work hard. They want everybody else to do it for them so they could just sit around and not have to toil. And they live long lives unless something gets them. Or if they're severely inbred and one of those disorders pops up like hemophilia or what have you. But they live a long time. But he was taught a lesson by the wild, hairy man who sounds like a Bigfoot, Enkidu. And after Enkidu had died, Gilgamesh really wanted to be immortal. And he could never obtain that from the gods. They would not allow that. So as I said in some of the previous videos, if you lived a life of several thousand years or even 1,000 years, compared to somebody who barely makes it to 50 or 75, you do seem like you're immortal, and you will have access to multiple generations of people to influence. And we look at the king's list in Manetho, and some of these very ancient kings had long reigns. And as we got to the last 6,000 years of our history, that they tend to become more equal in lifespan to us. So it's like a deterioration. But these elites have always lusted after an eternal life or a long lifespan, and I believe they know where they came from. And I read to you that the Watchers gave some kind of a quality to their Nephilim offspring, that they lived about 500 years. That was the goal, or the expected lifespan. And they wanted eternal life, which means whatever these gods and goddesses were living even longer lives than that. So I think everything is pretty much a lie. I think we've been through cycles over and over. I think they just erased the history. Any of these ancient skeletons found in the Americas are always gobbled up by the Smithsonian if they're out of the ordinary and destroyed. And it's written into the law that the Smithsonian doesn't qualify as a museum, and I'll talk about that in a later video with my experiences in regards to the red-haired mummies at Lovelock Cave and what's going on there. But I have to wonder if they're gobbling up these skeletons and passing them over to be examined for genetics so they can determine how to live longer lives, or just simply to cover up things in the past. Because I had told you that the Nagas had made it to the Americas before the demise of Atlantis, which is what Helen Blavatsky had written. And we see the double helix in many of the petroglyphs in the southwest of America, and these giant beans next to the average sized bean. So I'm not quite sure why all of this kind of falls in my lap, and all of these strange experiences I've had seem to come together. And I don't believe there's anything visiting from outer space. I think it's all from here. I think there was a past on this planet you can't even imagine. And I think it was these tall white beings with elongated skulls. And they got themselves up to a certain point in technology where they could extend their lifespans thousands of years in the same body. And I think they tinkered and they bioengineered hybrids, such as your Sasquatch or your Dogman or your mermaid. And I think they modified the weather and played around with very destructive technology. Laser weaponry, microwave weaponry, weather modification. And I think they certainly conducted warfare, as we know in those ancient texts, when they would burn the land and everything in it like an atomic bomb. And what are we doing today? In the last 100 years, look what we've done. The only thing we don't have is the flying craft for an individual, but certainly we have people that own helicopters that are not military, if they're rich enough and determined enough to learn how to fly it. But we have all kind of things, and if you're rich and one of these elites, you got a whole lot more and get away with a whole lot more and have all of these underground or islands off to your own to do the kind of things you shouldn't be doing. Yet we'll take an average person who gets caught with a bag of weed and throw them in jail, while you'll get a Jeffrey Epstein who has a rape island, gets convicted for pedophilia, and only serves a year in some cushy jail. You know there's a problem here on this planet. And these people know. They know what went on here. And that's why they burn the books. They've created these Semite religions. They design your medical system so you die off quicker. They don't want you to have health care. And they covet all this technology, and they make it hard for anybody who's not part of the club to get any kind of a power. And if you're coming up on these political elections and you're not down with the club, somehow you tend to have an accident, or you end up getting shot or something strange. So I feel we've come up to a point around the world where people have access to the internet and knowledge, and they've demanded their rights. And we've gotten rid of slavery that's out in the open, although slavery is making a comeback in the Middle East and North Africa. Those people have no sense of right and wrong. But What we haven't done is put the karma on these elites and these Semite priest crafts. The karma train hasn't come in yet. And all of this bickering about feminism and chauvinism and race and this race and that, that's all divisive. And the fact is, those people were people were oppressed in the past. That's why you had those movements. And things don't seem so bad now because you had those movements. But you're going backwards, and you're going to go backwards because these people never want you to come up. They always want you to toil in a cycle. And the karma train has not come in yet for these people at the top. And it may be coming very soon. Because nothing has been completely exposed yet in the way that it needs to be. And these people haven't been physically ripped down from their high place and completely exposed and dealt with. And I can tell you, I don't think that these religions of Islam and Judaism and Christianity as it is are going to survive. I think that their lifespan is limited. And it's coming up soon. Christianity may morph into something different, but Islam and Judaism are going to disappear from this planet. One way or another. I don't think things are going to remain the same. Even though there is a very, very calculated effort to keep people in a slave cycle. While these elites search for the secret of eternal life or long lifespans. That's what they want. Because then they can really rule over and kick back and not have to deal with this karma that's coming. And be put in a body that they despise, that they made, their ancestors made, or all of our ancestors made. So I just wanted to put some of these thoughts out there, and I apologize if it sounds strange, but I believe all things are coming together, and it's time to really start taking a look at these things and dealing with it. Thank you.